Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jacqueline Smith, and I'm the operations lead at the New York and New Jersey Council. Today, we're hosting one of our many webinar series entitled Risk to Readiness, Governance Essentials to Growing Business. I thank everyone for joining us today. I know it's 101, and we hope this time that you have given to us is productive and you enjoyed the webinar. Today, I wanted to invite two special guests. First is Shamis Pitts. Shamis is the founder and CEO of Pitts Leadership Consulting. She has over 25 years of experience in business strategy, business process, people management, and leadership. And I would also like to welcome Yannette Evans. Yannette is the Chief Executive Officer of GME Enterprises. She leverages more than a decade of industry experience in leading projects and driving process improvement for nonprofit, commercial, and government clients. Ladies, thank you and welcome. Shamis, take over.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jackie, for the intro. Good day, everyone. Again, welcome to Risk to Readiness, Governance Essentials for Growing Businesses. We're so glad that you took the time to join us today. As Jackie said, I'm Shamis, rhymes with promise, Pitts, founder and CEO of Pitts Leadership Consulting, or PLC for short. And I'm joined by Yannette Evans, CEO of GME Enterprises. First, a big thank you to the New York, New Jersey Minority Supplier Development Council for hosting this session and for continuing to create space for this important conversation that we're going to have today to help businesses like ours thrive. So I want to say hello to Yannette. Yannette, how you feeling today?
I am feeling good and I'm very excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
All right. So Yannette was ready for that question because she knows that I like to talk about feelings because feelings are data. So you may be wondering why the two of us are sitting here today. Well, Dora asked me to do an educational webinar, and I decided to focus on governance because it's a topic that has been and will continue to be top of mind for me as a business owner, navigating the current climate and the climate today and as it evolves. And frankly, since we do work in the human capital consulting space, it's extremely nuanced. And I thought it might be a little challenging to provide a clear how-to experience that keeps y'all satisfied, because that's why that's why business owners show up to these things. So I realized it would be a more holistic experience, not only to hear from me as I've worked to put governance practices and policies in place, but to also hear from a leader in the risk and compliance industry like Yannette. Both of our organizations are focused on strengthening resilience, managing risk, and learning and growing responsibly. We just do that from two different lenses. So, what are we getting into today? We're going to share a little bit more about what we do and then ground in what governance really means. Then we'll do a quick poll to just be clear about who's in the room, so we can make sure that we cover things that might be of particular importance to you based on your lens, and then talk about why governance matters now and what this enables us to do. Then we're going to walk through an approach to building a governance playbook. Right, Yannette is going to share, really bring the expertise of her company to bear, talking about what that can look like. And I'm going to share the practitioner perspective about how we at PLC have worked to figure it out and get it all done, what worked and what we've learned along the way. So we want to make sure that you know how to get started. And if you're already in it, validate the things that you know to be true and possibly close gaps. So as you have questions, feel free to put those into the chat. Housekeeping, right? Put them in the chat. Depending on what the question is, we may address it in real time. And other things we might wait until the Q&A. And I do have to say that we recognize that there's an opportunity cost of time. We know you have a lot on your plate, so we're going to attempt to get through as much as what we want to share and your questions within an hour, knowing that we've committed a full 90 minutes to this, but you may not have done so. Right, and know that this session is being recorded, and we gave our permission for that. We want to make sure that you can revisit the session and the deck after our time today. So with that, let's dive in. Yannette, please tell us about the work that GME Enterprises does.
Thank you, Shamus. So GME Enterprises is a management consulting firm. We're in our 11th year, and we focus on enterprise risk. Thank you. We focus on enterprise risk management, regulatory compliance, operations management, and business advisory services, mainly for financial services organizations, government agencies, and other commercial businesses. We're located in Chevy Chase, Maryland. So we are a part of the Capital Region Minority Supplier Development Council. So we're excited to be here with our crew from the north. Our founder, Gwimuse Evans, that's where the GME comes from, is a former CRO with Fannie Mae, and many of our consultants are former executives in the financial services industry space. So a lot of our clients are banks, credit unions, mortgage lenders, and then also since 2020, we've also been working with several agencies in the Commonwealth of Virginia, helping them with their ARMIX assessments. And ARMIX stands for Agency Risk Management and Internal Control Standards. And so we're excited that we are able to work with about 10 agencies now, and we are looking to expand our services into our neighboring states to help assist with their state government internal control work frameworks as well. So in short, we help organizations to run more efficiently and to position themselves for sustainable growth. And you can think of us kind of like a partner in making your business more strong and secure. And so one of the areas where I wanted to kind of focus on for our services are three core areas that we do are risk management, regulatory compliance, and business advisory services, like I stated before. But one area that I wanted to kind of highlight is third-party risk management, which is one of the areas that we provide, and that relates to the webinar that we're doing today. And so third-party risk management is something that we do with larger commercial companies, and it means figuring out how to reduce the risk that come from working with companies or vendors outside of your organization. And so for a lot of you that are, small business owners, you might be trying to become vendors with larger organizations. You might have to go through certain types of compliance checks for proposals or different jobs like that. And what we're doing is kind of helping to make sure that if there's a vendor that handles customer data, if there's mistakes or security issues that can hurt your business, we want to make sure that these organizations are checking their vendors carefully, monitoring their performance, and they have plans in place if things go wrong. And so we really help larger organizations create and improve effective practices for selecting, supervising, and managing vendors so that they can stay compliant and resilient in this rapidly changing world. There's so much going on that, people have to be more aware of. And so we make sure that they have confidence in the vendors and small businesses that they work with.
That's it?
That's it.
That's a lot. And that is why you are here today. So, right, I hope you all understand, right, why Inette is a great person to be here in this conversation, lending her expertise. And so if you have questions, remember, drop them in the chat. You get to have them answered today. So thank you,
I'm
Inette.
sorry, Shamus. Please let me know if I'm speaking too fast, because sometimes I tend to just go. Anybody in the chat's like, slow down. I will slow down. So I'm trying to be mindful.
No, you got it. You're doing the thing. You're doing it. All right. So PLC, Pitts Leadership Consulting, is a human capital consulting firm that specializes in organizational health and business readiness. So we help orgs adapt to be resilient, have a healthy culture, to have strong execution capabilities as they're navigating through complexity and change, because change is a constant. It's happening every day, and we live in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, which is so much now fueled by AI, right? So we focus on the human intelligence side, right? Because we know that organizations succeed when people lead well, collaborate deeply, and execute with purpose. So our services span consulting, advising, training and facilitation, individual, group, and team coaching, leadership, executive and leadership coaching, and I'm asked to keynote from time to time. So when I think about our differentiators, they are really about our people and our process. We partner with leaders to drive sustainable performance, combining executive experience, coaching capability, data-informed change management and learning, and execution excellence and responsible innovation. which is that last differentiator that we're going to dive in today. We do what works for us, and I want you to reflect on what's working for each of you and what may not be working with respect to your organization's governance practices, and ideally walk away with one action that you'll take in the next 30 days to enhance your current policies or practices and amplify your organizational health, right? Because organizational health is what's going to people around engage, not just, person in seat, but they will be more productive, but ultimately you're looking for performance to fuel organizational outcomes. We've been in business for 6 years. We predominantly work with financial services, consumer retail, tech, and other businesses, but that's who we have a lot of conversations with within the for-profit sector. And we also do a lot with mission-driven organizations, right, which is inclusive of nonprofit organizations as well as institutions of higher education. So with that, Enet, let's align on what governance is, because we keep using that word, and I want to make sure we're all grounded in what we're talking about.
Fantastic. Okay, so what is governance? So the definition of governance in business is the system of rules, practices, and processes used to direct and control a company. So it's how you run your business, and it's how you make sure that things are getting done the right way. So it involves establishing a framework to make sure that you can achieve your corporate goals, that you can manage your risks, that you can ensure accountability and transparency and fairness in decision making. And a strong governance structure is vital for a company's long-term success and sustainability. So it's about setting rules. It's about making decisions and leading by example, about holding everyone accountable, building consumer trust, and the most important part is having it documented. And so when we're talking about a framework, we're talking about a playbook, a lot of these things you're probably already doing. You might not just have it documented in the best way. And so that's really what governance is, so that we're aligned.
Thank you so much for that. So I see questions in the chat. I'm going to acknowledge them, and we're going to move to a quick poll so that we're capturing everything that we need. So keep it coming. So let's go to the quick poll. And we're not going to sit on the polls too long because we want to first understand what best describes your current role or focus area. That'll help us tailor the conversation to who's actually here. So we're going to take 10 seconds. So if you're multitasking, you might miss the boat. Y'all with me? Or are you going to let us figure this out as you ask questions? Okay, thank you. Y'all are with me, but so do we not have any responses to the polls? I see names in the chat, some of which I'm familiar with.
I think they're coming in now. I see
Okay.
a couple.
All right.
All right, they're coming in.
It's anonymous when you submit to the poll in case you're concerned about that. So you don't have to worry about that. We don't know who's who. All right, let's go ahead and see some responses so we have an idea. I think there's a mix of folks in the room. Clark, can you push the response to the poll and then move into question 2?
Yes, once you take yours, you can click through and the results will show up.
Oh, hee. I'm like, I thought I was excluded. All right. So all 3 of the questions were in there. Right, so it was about what role you have, what's your biggest governance challenge right now, and why this, and where are you on the journey? Right. So is everybody seeing this stuff with me?
Yep.
All right. So if you're seeing the responses, can you give me some idea, my friend?
Sure. So right now, it looks like a few responses are still coming in. We have about 16 so far. It looks like 56% of the people that are here are the business owner, the founder, or CEO.
Thank
And then
you.
the next one down is operations, and then some corporate members, and some
Okay.
human resources and others. So welcome.
Okay. It's a
Um,
mix.
the nice mix there. The next one, which is what's your organization's biggest governance challenge? The largest one at 40% is I don't have a governance challenge. I'm here to listen and learn. The
Okay.
next one is 27%. We need help aligning governance with growth/supplier readiness goal. And there's about 20% that says we are unsure how to right size governance for a small team. And then 7%, we have policies, but they're outdated and inconsistent. And then a few that says they don't know where to start. So welcome.
Mm.
And then the last one, when you think about your organization's governance maturity, where would you place yourself? 31% says we're focused on meeting basic requirements right now, which is awesome. 25% says we have a foundation and are working to align it with growth. 19% we're governance ready and using it as a competitive advantage. And then 6% we're taking initial steps to formalize policies. Congratulations.
Well, wonderful. Wonderful. And I think that's the beauty of this, right? To acknowledge where we are, right? Because most things I like to boil down in the world of work are current state, desired future state. How do you build the roadmap? So, and also to celebrate the wins, acknowledging what's working and recognizing there's still opportunity ahead, right? And so this is an opportunity for you all to, again, reflect, validate what's working, and then even if there are things that you already know, listen for the in-betweens and seek opportunity to improve whatever that looks like for you. There's not one right way. There's best practice, but this is really about figuring out where you are and what you need, and hopefully we can help support that. Even if it's just saying, hey, we're on the right track, right? As you move forward as a business. So with that, let us move into, so thank you all for that. So let's us talk through the business case, right? What is governance? Why does it matter now, right? We know it's not risk, let me slow down, management, it's organizational health management. So you may be clear on the business case, and there may be folks on your team that may be a bit behind that you need to help speed up a little bit. So the business case, right, for governance is that it creates the clarity, consistency, and ethical guardrails so we can build trust in our businesses, protecting ourselves, our clients, the relationships in between, and the mission of our work. But we know that things are moving really fast right now, and expectations are constantly evolving. So clients aren't just asking more from us as a small business. It's not just, can you deliver, but are you delivering in a way that's disciplined, trustworthy, and resilient? So we know, according to the US Chamber, 51% of small businesses now say regulatory and certification requirements are a barrier to growth. That tells us that governance isn't just about compliance anymore, it's market readiness, right? And some of you all are ready. If we can't demonstrate the discipline, we risk being screened out before we get to the table. So we really want to leverage this opportunity, not resist it. Inette, do you have anything to add or build to that?
Yeah, so really strong governance is about growth readiness. It means that you're organized, you're ready for bigger customers and partners and investors who want to see that you're following safe business practices. It makes it easier to onboard new clients, to pass buyer checks, and win bigger contracts, which creates confidence for long-term growth and building trust for long-term success. So it's very important.
Indeed, indeed. So thank you. So I know what you all in the room, the virtual room, might be thinking, that this just takes too much time, and you're not wrong. 47% of small businesses compliant work eats up valuable time. But when governance is intentional and right sides, it actually saves time. I experience this on a daily basis. You spend less time reacting and more time delivering, because it's giving you the structure that you need. So if something goes sideways, and we know sometimes things do, the team is more prepared to react without it being reactive, if that makes sense, right?
Right.
So, Enette?
And not only the structure, but it also can give you operational clarity. So having your clear roles and the written processes mean that your team knows their roles and responsibilities. And I know for some of us, you might be a solopreneur right now, but as you grow, or you might have one or two people, but as you grow, you need to start thinking about what those written processes and what those roles need to look like for your team, because having that in place will make your daily decisions simpler and smoother. It'll help avoid confusion, and it saves time when things go wrong. So you're also will be prepared to handle problems like data leaks or emergencies and have something in place before they happen instead of scrambling to react, which is what we call risk readiness. So being prepared for emergencies and changes means fewer surprises and better recovery when things don't go as planned. So this keeps your business running smoothly, even in the tough times, and it builds trust with partners and clients.
Mm. So what I heard was the credibility is our currency, right?
Definitely.
So we take all of this seriously, ethics, data security, and reliability. We know, though, that 53% of small businesses say that cybersecurity and data privacy are just top time drivers for them. So again, they're already doing not say they, we are already doing the work, but oftentimes it ends up being and feeling very proactive. So we're here to really advocate for formalizing your governance practices and policy and practices, because it just makes things run more efficiently. It becomes less about higher quality work rather than extra work.
Mhm.
Would you agree?
Definitely. And I think even we're talking about formalizing, going into that ethical space, having these things formalized will provide some ethical guardrails for your team. Having these rules written down that reflect your values will protect your reputation. They can guide your team's decisions. They can help you avoid mistakes or wrongdoings. And it shows your clients that you care about ethics and data security. And so a lot of times, there are, especially as business owners and runners and all those business runners, we know these things. Sometimes we have them in our minds, but if they're not written down, how can you share them? And so our clients are looking for us to have these things, and in order to have that data security, have the confidence that we have that data security, making sure that you have that in place is helpful.
Which gets us to resilience, right?
Mhm.
The IFC, or International Finance Corp, found that small and medium-sized enterprises with strong governance weather shocks better, but they're better in the long term. So, right, I mean, I feel like we're drilling it down. We may be saying things that you already know, but it's really about figuring out what's important to you and how you want to make this investment in your time. And again, you all are in various stages of doing this work. So kudos to you, right? Because this is all signaling various levels of maturity of the business. So it's really the work that we're doing is telling clients we're ready to play at the level required, or at least begin a thoughtful conversation around what's needed to move forward.
And just adding on to that, as small business owners, we know kind of the different processes, like for instance, to get our certifications and the different documents that you needed to have in place, the things that you needed to show to say that, hey, I'm a business ready to do something. So this is just the next level. And we want to really start to see more of these conversations happening at the small business level so that governance becomes commonplace. It's not something that's thought of as like the big players game, because now more than ever, with all of this upheaval and craziness going on just all around us, protecting ourselves and having these things in place can only help in the short term and in the long term.
Agreed. So the 5 drivers that you really homed in on based on what we were talking about were capabilities around operational clarity, ethical guardrails, cultural stability, risk readiness, and growth readiness. I really appreciate how you linked it to certification, because what we know at the end of the day, right, doing this work doesn't guarantee anything. If I had all the answers and it guaranteed everything, I'd be sitting on a beach somewhere, not having this conversation. But similar to certification, this is table stakes right now, and it prepares you to be in these conversations. right? And that's right. It's my quasi disclaimer, but right, we want to ensure that everybody, all the businesses out there, like ours, are prepared, right? I always like to say a shamanism, competence is preparation and practice, right? So having these governance policies, procedures, practices in place is really about um, building your confidence and plus, plus, plus.
Yeah. And it's a strategic advantage. It's about giving your business the confidence and credibility, to win bigger contracts and to make sure that you can meet your buyers' expectations. It's kind of like, I think that, we go into these, we go to these things like how to do business with these large enterprises. And it's like, I know I provide a great service or I provide a great product and everybody should be buying it. And while you know that, these large organizations also need to have the confidence and know that themselves. And so while you might be small right now and you're trying to grow, or you might be large and you just want to continue growing, having these things in place are going to just be helpful in the long run.
Yes, indeed. So keep going, Enette. Talk
Thank you.
to us about the 4 Ps.
So we're going to go next into some principles about governance. And one thing I love about this, also with Shamus, is that it kind of overlaps with some of the principles, where it talks about the 4 Ps, which are purpose, people, process, and performance. And I know that Shamus also has some of the Ps with the people and process.
Ps. Yes, yes.
And we do as well, people, process, and systems. And so there's just a lot of overlap where, these things just come into play. And so the 4 Ps, think of them as a foundation of how you run and grow your business. So the first one is purpose. Purpose keeps everyone moving in the same direction. It defines your mission, your values, and your main goals, and it ensures that every key decision aligns with your vision and what you want to achieve. The second one down is people. Now, people make sure that you have the right skills and culture for your business. It includes everyone from the owners to the managers to the team members, and it focuses on having strong leadership, clear roles, and a positive, accountable culture. The next P is process. Process ensures that things are running smoothly and that your problems are getting solved, that they're not just, oh, we'll ignore it and come back to it later. It covers the systems, the policies, and the routines for making decisions, tracking process, and handling challenges. It includes the written procedures, your meeting schedules, your monitoring, and your clear reporting. And last P is performance, which helps you learn, adapt, and win more opportunities. You want to have regular checks to make sure that you're meeting your goals and also managing your risks and making sure that you're using some feedback and reporting to guide improvement and future planning. And every small business can and should be using these principles. It doesn't have to be something grand. Start simple. Document your key steps, encourage your communication, and then keep just checking in to make sure that your results are getting better. And you will continue to hear us say over and over again, at least me, document, document, document. So all of these things are going to go back to documentation. Sorry, Shamus, are you going to say
Don't
something?
apologize. It sounds like you're talking about core building blocks to start off this conversation around like what's really in this governance playbook. So no shame
Well,
over
funny
here.
you should say that, Shamus. I actually have some core building blocks right here. Come on. Sorry, silly moment. So sliding from principles, I wanted to go into the core building blocks of a governance playbook. I think that we kind of talked in general about some things about what it is and why it's important to have. These are the 5 elements that you want to make sure as you are building your governance playbook that are covered. And now the first one is going to be compliance and mitigation. So that means you're going to document how you're staying compliant with the laws that are relevant to your industry, whether that's financial services, data privacy, or any industry specific standards. And I'll repeat this again as we go along as well, because this is the piece that is, I guess, a little bit more customizable for you. So for us, I'll use an example. Because we work with a lot of financial services organizations, one of the industries that we're always following is the OCC. And they have which is Office of Currency and Comptroller, excuse me. They offer a handbook that, goes through a lot of their different governance practices and just a lot of different things that we follow to make sure that we're in line with what the standards are for the financial services industry. Now, depending on where you're at and where you're serving, your industry standards are going to be different. Like, for instance, I know that Shamus will talk a little bit later about how she follows the SASB. That's not necessarily something that we follow, although we keep it in mind depending on our clients. But because where we're at, the laws and the regulations that we follow are going to be a little bit different. So when you're thinking about compliance and risk mitigation, you want to understand what the industry standards are for your industry. And so why this matters, large companies and government agencies are going to ask, how do you ensure compliance? So you need to make sure that you have a clear, documented answer. So some of these examples might be to maintain a compliance calendar, which tracks regulatory deadlines. You can document your risk assessment processes, like how do you identify risks, how do you evaluate them, and you can keep a record of your trainings and certifications that your team completes. So just these are a few examples that kind of go across industry, just to make sure that you have that documentation to show that you're ensuring compliance. And so once you've documented compliance, you need clarity on who does what, which moves into operational accountability. And what that is clear documentation of who owns what responsibilities and how issues get escalated, which maps back to the principles, which was the P for people. So when something goes wrong, there's no confusion about who handles it and who needs to be informed. So everybody owns something, everybody's in charge of something and accountable for something. And you want to keep this in mind, even if you have a small team now, if you have plans to grow, map that out. So as you grow, who is going to be responsible for what, and keep that a living document that grows with you. So from accountability, it extends into how we protect our sensitive information, which is data security. And now more than ever, that's become one of the most important things, especially as Shamus was mentioning about the rise of AI, the different language models, things like that. These companies want to know how you are protecting their client information, how you're protecting proprietary data, and how you're protecting intellectual properties. So you want to make sure that you start to develop some policies and procedures around your data security, because data breaches are very expensive and they damage trust. And most clients are now requiring evidence of your security practices. So some examples of that are access controls. Who can see what data? Who can access it? Your encryption standards for your data, how you share files, how you store, and then just having regular security awareness for your training and your staff. Shamus, did you want to say anything? I feel like I'm just talking. Okay.
Listen, that's why you're going first, because then I'm going to be like, real talk, this is how it happened for us.
All right, fantastic. So the next one is going to be your ethics and your professional integrity. And so you should have a written code of conduct that defines expected behavior and addresses any fraud, any bribery, conflicts of interest, and anything else ethical that might be related to your specific industry. I think that this comes doubly as important where a lot of small businesses are using 1099 consultants, or any type of other like part-time help, things like that, where you want to make sure anybody who's touching your business, anyone that is representing your business, understands what your ethics are, what your code of conduct is, that you have it written down. So if there's any issues, you can go back to what's written, and that's the law. So one practical step is making sure that you have a code of ethics documented and signed by all of your employees and contractors. And having this in place will also help with the last building block, which is incident response and business continuity. So having simple, documented plans to respond to security breaches, IT failures, natural disasters, or any other major disruptions that might come through business. I mean, think about COVID, think about government shutdowns, think about just so many different things that can come and disrupt your business. These larger companies that you might want to work with, they want to know that if something happens, you have a plan in place. They need to know that you can continue serving them, or that you can recover quickly when something does go wrong, and that you have a documented plan in place to do so. So one example is an incident response plan that has clear steps and contact information. You know, in the case of emergency, contact X, Y, and Z. Any type of data backup, recovery procedures, and a communication plan for notifying clients and stakeholders. So these 5 building blocks: compliance and risk mitigation, operational accountability, data security, ethics and professional integrity, and incident response, they create a framework that's not just defensible, but it's a competitive advantage. It signals to larger organizations that you're a mature, reliable partner. And the good news is you don't have to start all at once. You don't have to build this whole thing overnight. You just want to start with one area, begin to document, and then build from there. So that is the core building block, Shamans.
Thank you. And now I'm going to be real talk, because about what actually unfolded for us. So at PLC, we've been focused on governance since day one, because our core services involve leadership development, org assessments, culture diagnostics, and coaching. So during our engagements, we often have access to confidential employee data, executive information, proprietary client data, internal business metrics. So this has made data protection, ethical use, and clear controls non-negotiable for us. In a previous life, I was working for a broker-dealer. I was the liaison to legal and compliance for my team. And in a world before that, OCC was one of my primary clients. So I did a lot of work with FIREA, financial regulatory agencies. So I'm keenly aware of mitigating and managing and reporting downside risk. That being said, real talk, the driver for me to prioritize creating a holistic governance framework was needing to respond to a client cybersecurity assessment requirement this summer. So the questionnaire on its surface looked like a beast. And then I realized that it didn't need to be hard, because we could easily answer all of the questions if we removed the blocker, which was, right, we had practices living in policies in various stages, in various forms of documentation that underscored how we operated. And it had been that way for years, but they each existed separately and didn't talk to each other. So we did a 3-week sprint to close the gaps. So what you see on the screen, one might argue, is the best practice for the order of how you might build the policies, right to left, starting with, as you talked about, the ethics and professional integrity, which includes code of conduct. But I'll say we didn't start with an ethics and integrity policy, but our company had stated values since day one. And those values were embedded in our ways of working and our practices. So, and no, I didn't focus on an asset management policy second. I did that last, because I admit I was thinking about asset management from a physical asset perspective. And our data and our client data are clearly assets, and that was always top of mind. So we really started, the first policy that we had that was like really robust was the data security policy. So technically, right, that's where we started and spent most of our time. And right over time, right, we did that several years ago, and over time we began codifying our approach to align with the things that we were doing, like using an encryption tool to send emails that contained sensitive information, and using an encryption tool to store data on our drive. So once we became intentional, also about, right, embedding the use of AI into our work, we started working on the AI policy, and we spent a lot of time talking about responsible use, not because our ways of working were problematic, but rather how other people we came in contact with in meetings were using AI or requesting access to things. And so we didn't want to get caught up in somebody else's mess and undermine our reputation. More to come with that. And right in the background, we had a rudimentary incident response plan and business continuity plan. but they were living in the background. So, right, given the busyness of the days, I knew that I needed to revisit all of this because I do believe in leading by example, and walking the talk and not being half cocked about um, what was, whether or not this was important. Because again, it was always in the forefront, but we needed to be extremely thoughtful about how each of these things work together and bring that to the forefront. So it's been a journey. It's going to continue. It's a journey, right? It's a constant iteration, which we're going to move into now, talking about the 5 steps. Now, I do want to acknowledge the questions that came in, and we're going to address those questions. Right, as a small but growing service-based business, what governance practices help ensure consistent decision making across leadership as more team members and departments are added? All the things that we're going to address right now are speaking to that. What governance structures are recommended for agencies that manage multiple clients with overlapping deadlines to mitigate reputational, financial, or delivery risks? And the third question that's been posed: what governance tools or frameworks are best for creative or service-based companies to standardize operations without limiting creativity in this age of AI? Bottom line, all of these are important, but we're not here saying tackle everything at once. There's a prioritization because each of these things are going to impact how you, like, all of these policies and practices live in tandem. And it's just a matter of figuring out where you want to, like, the best place to start and moving through that. So let's get started. Inette, step 1, and it is now 41 of, so be pithy, as will I.
Okay. All right, so 5 practical steps to get started. The first one is going to be to start with a framework and assign ownership. And I think that this kind of goes to a couple of the points in some of the questions that were asked already, especially I talked about like service-based industry and creatives. You have to select a basic governance model that is appropriate for your industry. And so basically where that starts is figuring out who the regulators are in your industry. What are the rules that you have to follow, and the rules that the clients have to follow that you're serving? Being aware of that will kind of help you determine kind of where your framework needs to go or how it needs to be built. And when we talk about a governance framework or governance policy, there's not a one that like which governance policy. It's basically like you are building it for yourself. There's a lot of things that you're already doing that are policy. They're just not written down. That are practices that are just not written down. And so it's really about sitting down and thinking about what are all the things that we're doing, making sure that they're covered, and then where there are holes and gaps, going back through to make sure that we have something written to cover that as well. So that's kind of, to layman's term, bring it down. So it's not like there's one framework or, oh, pick number 2 or number 3. It's really created out of what you do as a business. And so when you are starting with that framework, you're going to figure that out for your industry. And then you're going to choose someone on your team to lead those compliance efforts, and then make sure that everyone knows who's in charge. Having a clear system and a leader make sure that important tasks gets done and nothing falls through the cracks. And so when you're thinking about planning out your framework, planning out your playbook, assign it. Even if you want to assign it to yourself and not just say, oh, we need to do this, make it someone's responsibility, because then at least it comes from out here to in here and here.
Yeah. So when I had been attending so many MWE conferences and seminars over the past 2 years where governance was a repeated part of the conversation, right? So I was listening for what sorts of standards folks were mentioning, but then I went and did my own research and realized that SASB was the best one for us. And even within that, there's a professional commercial services because of the work that we do as human capital consultants and professional development practitioners. So it was a good match for us because it gave us space to grow. And it was acknowledging like, okay, yes, we're small. And there were already things that we were doing, like, as you mentioned, that aligned with that standard. So right. Yes, there's so many to choose from, but that one was the best fit for us. And so once I was able to say, okay, that's the standard that we want to manage to, then we can look into all the nuance. We looked into all the nuance of the standard to figure out, well, how would it, when we actually go to operationalize it, like what makes sense? So we layered on NIST as a framework within that standard. So I know I'm using acronyms, but it's less important about the acronym or which, but just recognizing there's not one right way. And it's a collaboration. So our director of client operations, Shonda Edwards, was the natural owner of the execution of what we're going to do, because she's living in the data and the operations and the practices as it relates to our clients and internally. I own the strategy, and there's so much collaboration and conversation in between. Right. And so, I mean, she lives inside my brain, but and there's places in there most people shouldn't want to go or don't want to go. It's a little scary in some of those places, but she knows how to ask, right? We have strong rapport, and we ask thoughtful questions of each other, and able to move things forward. So, how about step 2?
Awesome. So step 2 is conduct a risk assessment and data inventory. So you're going to identify the main risks to your products or services, or identify the risks that are posed to your clients, like data, IT, any supply chain risks. Think about what could go wrong, like money loss or data leaks. You're going to document the sensitive information that you handle, any customer data, like Shamus was saying before, anything like contracts, and also document any potential gaps where you think something might be missing or at risk. You want to identify these risks, and you want to list any important information that protects your business from surprises or any losses by knowing what could go wrong and what needs safeguarding. Shamus?
Yeah, so we mapped all the data types we handle, as you mentioned, right? Client employee data, business context, feedback, assessment data, our internal team data, then classified each into client data, team data, proprietary data, business data. And then we gave each risk low, moderate, high. And we really then defined who's on the core team and what they're actually touching versus who's on the extended team, because we do also work with contractors, and to be clear about what level of activity that they have with respect to data processing, if any, including AI tool usage. So we realized that those clear access distinctions, as you mentioned, were extremely important based on our 2-tier structure. And we actually had more sensitive data than we realized. And so we've been a lot better about not asking for things that we don't need, right? Real talk. And then we really need to address AI tool usage. No surprise there. And that our employee contractor model, we needed to have governance that was flexible, but also had clear access controls. So it's all about, starting with what you have and then organizing it logically based on how your business actually operates, using real business information, not something theoretical and fluffy, because that just makes it harder.
Yeah. And we're also a service-based business. So data is going to be a large one. For most service-based businesses, that's going to be an area where a lot of risk comes in, how you're securing data. If you're working with clients that are giving you access to their databases, when do they restrict that access? Who can see it? When is the access removed? All of those things are pieces that you need to keep in mind when it does come to data inventory. So moving on to number 3 is building core policies and gathering due diligence items. So this is kind of when people are talking about what is the framework? It's really about creating the clear policies, even if they're brief, that set clear expectations and guide your daily operations. And so even as we're talking about, all these different things about data security and things, and it sounds like a lot, the SASB, the NIST, the OCC, start simple. Start with just think about what do you do every day? What are the operations that need to get done? Even if it's small, start a paragraph of a policy, start somewhere, and begin to have that documentation. The due diligence items, you're going to start to assemble your essential documentation, like your proofs of insurance, your references, your certifications, your financial statements, anything that might be required for audits or for external review. You know, as you remember during the certification process, you had all those documents that you had to compile. And even as you're signing up all these different vendor databases, they're asking for all these documentation. And it's so much easier where, yes, it can be time consuming compiling it, but then once you have it in the same place, you can just, you know, make it a lot more automated of a process the next time you have to do it. So think about that mindset with all of these areas. So creating these core policies and also keeping those key documents makes your business safer. It makes it easier to run, especially during audits and emergencies. And it proves to your clients and your partners that your business follows safe practices and you're mindful. So.
Mm. Yeah, and prioritization, thank you. And just building off of that, prioritization is key, right? We started with data security and because we have to deal with PII, personally identifying information, and AI policies because, right, it's a wild, wild west right now with respect to AI, right? Tech companies are using or making decisions about how they're using the data that we submit that may not align with your internal standards. And so I'm sure it's no surprise, though, that we did leverage AI tools to navigate us through this process, real talk, right? Enable us to really build consistent language and structure and cross references across our policy documents, right? Shonda was leading the charge on that with those two documents. I was leading the charge on others. But right, we were working off what we had, and right, an important thing that I did was go back to our insurance policy with our provider to make sure that what we were saying align, we had coverage, and to see if there were gaps in our policy, because it wasn't just a rinse and repeat. I'm like, let me go and make sure that we have our bases covered. So some of you may be dealing with limited bandwidth, right? I get it, because it's important to not try and tackle everything simultaneously, because this gets to be an intentional process that you're doing alongside your team, because again, ensuring that everybody's on the same page, because you want to bring something to life that you're actually going to use.
Yeah.
And it's not just this thing that you did to say that you did, and it not really help you with the business decisions that you need to make. Right. So AI is a powerful accelerator. Clearly, you need to, right? AI is coupled with human intelligence, right? I got to put that plug in because it's a tool, but it doesn't replace you all, us as humans to make our business decisions. It's just use mechanisms to help us figure out what decisions that we need to make as we're going down this road. So I'll kick it back over to you for item 4.
Thank you, Shama. So one of the things that you brought up, which I just wanted to highlight, was so important to number 4, is prioritizing what you need the most based on what's going to make the most immediate impact for your business. And so when Shama was talking about how they started with the data security, that made the most substantial impact for her to start with. Not saying she didn't have a code of conduct, they just maybe didn't formalize it yet, but it's a place to start. And so you want to make sure that you're aligning your playbook with your business needs so that you can integrate it into your operations. And that's one of the tricky parts about the conversation that we're having today, because I wish that I could just say, here's my governance playbook, copy, paste, and use it for you. If you're not working with clients in the financial services industry, some of the things that we're following, some of the things that we make sure that our clients know and do won't apply to your contractors, won't apply to your team. And so I wish that we could, look up all the industries and know all of their standards and give you a guide. This is a kind of way just to give you those general guidelines to say, figure out what your business needs are, figure out what your operational needs are, and build policy, procedures, and controls that work for your type of business. So integrate practices into your day-to-day operations so that compliance and risk management are embedded into the culture and routines, that your team is trained to use these rules as part of your normal work. And as a risk management person, we just see it, so you kind of see the train crash coming. We don't always prepare for things that we're not aware of. And a lot of time risk management isn't something that we think of until so we're talking about insurance or our cars, but it applies to our businesses and the things that we do every day. So you want to make sure that these rules are fitting your business, that they're using them to keep your team consistently doing the right thing. And it's also going to help you stop problems before they grow, because your team is now going to be able to refer to those rules instead of scrambling to find you to tell them what to do. So it's just that extra layer of protection and way to streamline.
Yeah. I want to build off of that and say real talk. People don't read stuff.
That's real. That's real talk.
I mean, so it was important for us when we were creating our documents, when we wanted to think about practical use, is that, right? Don't put everything in the kitchen sink in a policy document. There's a separate procedure document that goes along with it. The most important thing is people can read and understand, and right, in a simple way, what we're committed to. Right. And so it's an iterative process, but right, given again, so yes, in an ideal world, we had our values statements and we had our ways of working around integrity and our values, and codifying that, even if you've been in business for a couple of years, into that initial ethics and integrity document. At least, right, it's the thing that at the end of the day you're always coming back to. What are your values? What's important to you? Because those things internally and within your team and externally your clients, that they have to me and my squishy coaching, like they have to feel that and know that that's true in what you say and in what you do, right? So there's the evidence of how it shows up in the work, but it's also, right, the alignment of the questions that you're asking and how you're thinking about things. So in the beginning stages, less is more.
Yeah.
Less is more. Okay, so with that, I know we're almost at the hour, and we're sharing all the nuggets. So keep it moving, Enette.
Okay, number 5 quickly is monitor, improve regularly, and communicate. So you want to regularly check and update your policies and practices, because it'll make sure that you're catching any new risks. It keeps your business strong and ensures your whole team is working together to protect the business. And so a lot of times, with some of the banks will do due diligence reviews, and we're looking at their policies to see if they've done their updates for the year. One standard back practice is between 6 months to a year. You want to be looking at all of your policies to just make sure that they're fresh, that they're reflecting what you're doing now, and that they're not outdated. And so just making sure that you had some type of system in place to make sure that you're looking back over your practices, looking back over your policies, looking back over your framework, that it's growing as you're growing. So, Shaman?
Yeah, we're, this, no shocker, right? This is never done. It's that Kaizen, continuous improvement, not to say to make it feel like it's, from a weight of heaviness, but it's all about, right, navigating and adapting, iterating to what's happening. So we're still working on, we're going to be in step 5 for a while. Yeah. Continuing to chip away, close gaps, acknowledge what's working, as our processes, policies, processes, procedures continue to grow with us. So one quick, share around what this has looked like in practice. If we go to the lessons from the field, we ended a contract with a top 5 online survey company. If you could go back one, thanks. We were already skeptical of the company's data practices. Again, they're a major corporate company. We've been using them for a while, but after we reviewed their AI features against our policy, we realized their practices clearly violated our policy. And so it made the non-renewal decision very easy and defensible, rather than just like, Chicken Little, the sky's falling. We made a clear decision to move away. And also, when we were evaluating note-taking tools, right, I was always against people using their note-taking tools in my meetings, because I'm like, what's happening with this data? So when we were considering onboarding ours, we did a thorough vetting of lots of tools and landed on the one that we use. But one of the popular companies that I was swatting out of meetings is now named in a class action suit, alleging that the company was secretly recording private conversations in meetings without informed consent. So again, that was a clear decision, right? I made those decisions without a formal policy, but it did not, it undermined how we our approach to data, right? And so so I did that with a clear head. And once we integrated everything in our policies, again, these decisions just keep getting easier, because then it's like, okay, let's look against the policy and make a decision, right? It's made work a whole lot easier. And right, if I look at how we communicate to the market also, if we go to the next slide, it's like we're able to more easily talk about how we're delivering services, right? This is a differentiator for us, because that aligns with our brand of thorough, thoughtful, compassionate, with a focus on accountability. Again, we're forever in step 5, but all of this work has just made um, being in the practice of and talking about our governance that much easier. So last things, I know, Inette, you wanted to share some final success factors.
All right, zooming on through.
Yeah, if there's any additional questions, please add them to the chat. We still have more time, so go ahead, please.
So we're coming to the end of our presentation. But to summarize some of what we've talked about today is in 5 key success factors. And what Shamus was saying about being in step number 5 is so important, because one of the reasons why this is a circle on the screen is because this never stops. You start your governance framework, you start your playbook, and you're just continually perfecting it, continually growing it, continually changing it to fit your business as your business is growing, depending on the industries you're going into, depending on the clients that you take on, depending on the partners that you have. This will continue to grow with you. This was really just about introducing the subject, starting the conversation, especially in the small business space. And sorry, Shamus, I'm taking some liberties here.
Yeah,
one of the things we had gone to a summit not too long ago, and there were a lot of small business in the audience that were asking about how could they do business with this large financial organization. And one of the things they were talking about is like, we want to make sure that you have the things in place so that if we come to you to work on a project, we don't put you out of business because you can't handle it. Or like, for instance, Shamus was talking about the AI, platform that they no longer use. If she had somebody on her team that decided to use it, and they didn't have it written down, it could cause, major problems with their vendors, with their clients. And so it's really just about making sure that you have these things in place. But so from this summit, there was a lot of conversation about what are the things that small businesses can start to do and start to be aware of, to be prepared. Because a lot of times we'll hear, oh, I have my certification, somebody should give me a contract now. Or, oh, I have my business name, somebody should give me a contract now. But as we are growing and learning, this business stuff has layers. And so if you want to continue to grow and compete and win larger, you want to have these things in place. And so the success factor number 1 is document control matters. Keep your documents organized and up to date. This is your foundation. So wherever you're going to start with what you have, start with the documents you have in place, and then you can kind of see where we talked about the gaps, see where you need things. There are a lot of times where we're dealing with consultants or dealing with vendors, dealing with clients, and something comes up and it's like, oh, we don't have a policy to address that. We don't have anything written down to address that. We need to fix that as soon as possible because it could be immediately impact. So for instance, if a client says, do you have a data security policy? You can produce it immediately. You're not scrambling. You're not sending them the wrong version. And then also you're not just trying to run onto one of these language model platforms to quickly shoot me out a security policy, but it doesn't align with the standards of your industry. And so you don't need expensive software for your document control. If you can start with your SharePoint folder, you can start with a Google Drive. Any type of naming conventions work fine to start. Just be consistent. So that's number 1. Number 2 is memorialize existing good practices. So you already have routines. You've been in business. You're doing things that work. So turn those routines into your policies. You have routines that work, you haven't written them down yet. So maybe you always review proposals before your submissions, or maybe you have a specific sequence for client onboarding. Maybe you back up files every Friday. Those are government practices or governance practices, excuse me. You're just not calling them that yet. So the things that are working for you, you don't have to recreate the wheel. Just write it down. Write it down. Success factor number 3 is use real world examples. So make sure your rules fit your real business situations. And I've said that before. We work with a lot of financial institutions and state agencies. If you're working more on the creative side or things like that, there's going to be different rules. There's going to be different regulations that you need to have in place. So governance is the most powerful when it reflects how you actually work and not just a generic template of how you think you should work. So it needs to actually work for you. And you don't want to have generic content because it won't actually help your team when they're facing an actual decision. So use real world examples. Success factor 4, plan for growth and build policies that can grow with your company. You don't want to have to rewrite everything when you hire 10 employees or when you win that major contract. You want to write your policies. I would suggest using role-based language. So put project manager instead of Sarah or team lead instead of Joe, so that the policy survives any promotions or departures. And this will save you at least some time from constant rewrites, and it will show your larger clients that you're thinking strategically. And then the last step is your continuous improvement mindset. And this is what Shama was talking about and I was before. It's about regularly reviewing and refreshing your plans to keep your business strong and ready for change. And it's a mindset that you have to have, because this is going to demonstrate that your clients, that you're not just reactive, you're proactive. You're thinking ahead. You're thinking about what's coming. You know, one thing that we talk about in our industry is emerging risks. And so for those of you that are in AI heavier service industries, you can already think of some of the problems that are going to come down the line. You know, and Shamus has mentioned some of the regulation around data. Before some of these large companies start thinking about it, you should start thinking about it now and have these things in place to protect yourself as you grow. And so there's a little picture on the side. So to help you remember these steps, we created a governance checklist for small businesses that has some actionable items that map directly to what we discussed today. So when we get to the end and there's a QR code, I wanted to have you sign that.
QR code now so they can download it before.
Oh, thank you. Teamwork makes the dream work.
There you go.
Yeah. But we'll have a QR code there, you know, that talks about some of the, not talks about, excuse me, that encompasses the key steps, the principles, some of the things that we shared to help you get started. So Shamus, I didn't mean to jump ahead, but go ahead.
No, I wanted to make sure that as folks are heading out, that before they head out, they have the opportunity to grab that checklist. So thank you for putting that together, Enette, because we want you to have the takeaways, to have the reminders for you to continue to do this work. So a lot of what we talked about today, right, is a window into, for PLC, not how we think, is into how we think, not what we actually sell, right? Governance is how we practice readiness, but our work is about helping organizations live it. So if you're looking to develop stronger leaders, healthier culture, more consistent execution across your team, that's our lane. And so we welcome conversations, book a call with us. Technical adoption is outpacing human adaptation, real talk. Many teams are high performing on paper, but disconnected in practice, and it's important to co-create change. So please reach out to us if you want to strengthen leadership readiness and help your people lead through uncertainty, communicate with clarity, and stay engaged, even when change feels constant. Reach out and book a call if you want to design and facilitate experiences that rebuild trust, strengthen communication, and create new norms for collaboration and accountability, especially as we're living in this AI-focused world. And we're happy to help design strategies that are transparent, participatory, and psychologically safe, so people don't just comply with change, they commit to it. One of the things that I wanted to circle back to before we end ENET is that when we work, because we work with a lot of extended, they're PLC team members, but many of them are contractors.
Mhm.
And we always, when we spend a lot of time vetting and onboarding team members up front, because we always talk to people about, we operate in a PLC bubble. And there's a lot of folks that work in our space that don't. But if we don't operate in the PLC bubble, which means working attached to all of our tech stack, that enables us to have control. Because, right, there's a lot of coaches that, are working off of their own platforms, and folks that are, having their own, working for multiple folks, right? But we don't work that way, because we know, without clearly vetting and onboarding operator, like our team, into our bubble, we don't have any way to manage risk.
Yeah.
And there's some folks that, right, it doesn't work for them, and so they're not on the team, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's like understanding, like making the business case for folks as to why this is important. And so I share that to just help clarify, like, because when you have the governance in the background and you understand why it's important, and you can communicate it to your team, to prospective team members, to clients, that really reinforces why we spend time doing any of this stuff.
Yeah.
We're not just
Definitely.
looking to check boxes. We're creating an experience that enables us to build trust and, right, open up possibility and mitigate risk, right? And when I think about the word risk, it really is, risk is reward and risk, right? People always think about risk as downside risk. There's upside risk. It's called reward, that's opening up possibilities for our clients, and for us as businesses. So I just invite folks to think about that. Like, I think the last I'll share, that's what I really wanted to end with. Like, risk is upside and downside, and having strong governance enables you to make the decisions and to have and operate in a way that's going to be win-win for everybody.
Awesome. And to piggyback on that, piggyback on your piggyback, I think that, with thinking about risk, is a strategic advantage, and sometimes, thinking about, we do a lot of auditing services as well. And of course, when you come and do audits, everybody thinks about you as the bad guy, you're uncovering all the cracks and looking at the skeletons in the closet. But it's really about just making sure that you have a snapshot of where your business is. It's not about, pointing out things that are bad and making you think you stink. It's about saying, okay, this is where we're at right now. And if we want to get to here, if we want to be better, these are the things that we need to do. And so even relating to Shamus's point about the contractors, when you think about larger organizations and their employees, they go out as a reflection of that organization. And a lot of times as small businesses, we might have partners, we might have consultants, we might have contractors that are going out as an extension of us. And this kind of relates to some of the questions. I did want to go back to the questions in the chat in a little bit, but having these things written down, make sure that as people are going out to be a reflection of our companies, they know what they're doing. You're not just assuming that they know how to handle themselves. You're not assuming that they know how to represent your companies correctly. It's written down for them to follow. So it's out of your head, out of your mouth, and on paper. So if somebody is somewhere and they're like, how do we normally handle this? What technologies do we normally do? What is the process? It's standard. Everybody's doing the same thing. It's uniform, it's consistent, and there's that extra fail safe in there. Excuse me.
And coming back to it, right? Because it's a coaching technique, which, right, you can think about it, but it becomes life when you actually put it on paper, codify it, and then have conversations about it, right? That takes it from just something rattling around in the background to the foreground. And as you're growing, being able to communicate it with consistency and regularity really helps close gaps, right? One of the questions in the chat, many years ago, mountains of paper were a cliche. Inevitably, the shredder ate up 75% of that problem. Fast forward, as an IT company, we're now engaging clients with clouds of legacy and disconnected data. The business culture spans a variety of ideas with how to solve, ranging from delete all immediately to wait, I need to look at it. What's your recommendation for the first step to get data hoarders to move forward?
Shamus, do you have any thoughts?
Off the top of my head, something I like to say, hashtag start small. So, and understand, like make a decision about where you need to start. Um, in some respects, we were data hoarders because we, through this process, started purging electronic data,
Mm,
right? Because why were we still holding on to it? Even if it were encrypted, like why do we still have it? Because our data policy, we decided we don't need to keep most data, client data, after a year of an engagement, right? So even though it's not physical paper, we were still holding data, hoarding data. So, but because our policy said after a year, toss it, right? Or de-identify it, right? Which may be a more apt description of what we're doing, because data is still an asset. That's what we started doing,
yeah.
right? As in the background. So again, I think it's like hashtag start small for the first step to move. That's the first step of the recommendation.
Yeah. And
What
I would
about you?
say adding to that is to start with a record retention policy. And so, like, for instance, if you work at a state level, they have paper and they'll say you have to keep it for 5, 7, 10, however many years it needs to be kept. And then there's a process to dispose of it after that. And so if you're in an instance where you have data, that's being hoarded or just being, I've ran into that where you get rid of everything and then it's like, wait, where's that one document? It's gone forever.
Mhm.
Figure out in your industry or with your customers how long you're actually going to need that data. And so sometimes it's about protecting yourself. If you're holding on to something, you might want to say, okay, we keep it a year after the project in case the client comes back to ask for this documentation. Or, okay, we do something every 5 years. So they might come back in 5 or 6 years, and so whatever works for your industry, figure that time frame out and build a policy around it and then assign it to someone in that space. So as there's that continual improvement mindset and they're going through these policies or they're going through that data, hey, this is past that time frame. This is something we need to look at getting rid of. So that's where I would suggest to start.
Sounds like you're being consistent. You're like back to create the policy for it. Yeah, good point. Yeah, I mean, good point, right? Because that's what you do. Like you're being consistent about your approach,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah.
And I wanted to go back. I saw some questions earlier from Stephanie
Mhm.
that we talked about, but I wanted to kind of go back to it where it says a small but growing service-based business, what governance practice help ensure consistent decision making across leadership as more team members and departments are added. And so I went into that a little bit where I talked about, kind of building out your hierarchy of kind of where you are planning to go and figuring out where those permissions or I guess authority needs to be. But I also wanted to mention a RACI matrix, if you have never heard of that, or if you have, just to remind you. So RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And it's really just about looking at no matter what level you're at, making sure that there's somebody responsible, making sure there's somebody accountable, if there's somebody that needs to be consulted and informed in the process, having that now. And so and it's like Shama said, start small. So you have your small team. Somebody needs to be responsible for all these things, and then it just grows as you grow. And so one of the things that I would recommend if you're thinking about how to kind of put that accountability in place is using a RACI matrix. And so I think that's very important to have. Shamus, I don't know if you wanted to add anything. I
Yeah,
saw you
no,
were there
listen,
celebrating.
me and Racy, we love a Racy. So it just makes things clear,
Yeah.
right? So while I might be accountable ultimately for all of it, I'm not doing this by myself. Right, as the business owner, yeah, I'm accountable for governance, right? But Shonda, our director of operations, is accountable for elements within that broader piece. And
Mhm.
there's some things that I'm responsible to get to her to help her create like certain levels of the policy or the design of the words, right? Like she's
Mhm.
accountable for that, but I'm responsible. I'm giving inputs. So it really depends on what you're creating and how you view the ultimate output and how you want to organize and structure we do everything like a project, right? It's a project. And
Mhm.
so when you think about project management, Raytheon project management is one of the many tools that you can use to support your project management, but that's how we approach that and most other things, right? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of moving parts, and we're doing this potentially in very small teams, and we get to
Mhm.
support each other on our team, and yeah, that's an important part of it.
And one of my mentors kind of gave that to me last year, because as owners, we want to touch everything. We want, and we're used to, when you're, a solopreneur, you're doing it all. And as you're adding people to the team, you're letting go of pieces. And so you want to make sure that you're letting go of a full piece and not just, parts of something, but that is documented. Who is responsible for this? And that might take some burden off of your shoulders, but it also gives the people on your team guidance and direction for where they're
Yeah.
supposed to go.
Right. And freedom to act,
And the freedom to act. That's correct. Without you, it'll make you feel better.
Right.
Okay, so the next one: which governance structures are recommended for agencies that manage multiple clients with overlapping deadlines to mitigate reputational, financial, and delivery risk? And I'm going to kind of give a sideways answer that's not necessarily tied to governance. It kind of goes back to your operational policies. There's not a one size fits all depending on the industry that you're in. But one thing that's been working for us, this is not a commercial, but a little bit of a commercial, is EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it's really about making sure that you have a documented operational system for your small business. And so we use EOS, but something along those lines, where it's like just where you're building those core operational procedures of how you're going to deal with this. And also, if you're talking about managing multiple deadlines, one of the simplest things to do, create a calendar. Create a calendar with all of your deadlines in it, figure out who's supposed to be responsible for us, set some reminders in there, and then as you can kind of see it, that will help you figure out how you need to write it out. And so the way that my company might manage multiple deadlines and contracts and mitigate our financial risks are going to be different than yours. So I can't say, do it just like this, but really think about what you're touching, what you're going to be touching, who's touching what and how, and start to lay it out that way. You've already got it in here. It just kind of just writing it out and making it plain.
Wonderful.
And the last thing I wanted to do, I'm sorry, Sean, this was the last question from Stephanie, was what governance tools or frameworks are best for creative or service-based companies to standardize operations without limiting creativity in this age of AI? And Shamus went into that a little bit in her case study of her like real world example of where they were using an AI platform that didn't align with their policies for how they secure their own data. So they couldn't use that platform anymore. But let's say that was a decision that Shamus had just made herself and she never wrote it down. And there were people on her team still using that platform because they didn't know any better. You want to have some type of security policy, and AI policy is crucial. If your team is going to use it, tell them how to use it. If they're going to be using these language models, don't put client information in there. Don't put, just write down the things that you want to make sure that even as people are being creative and using AI and using this technology, you are securing yourself, you're securing your client deliverables, any of your, proprietary data, starting with an AI policy and then growing from there. Unfortunately, you'll start to see what policies you need as you start to deal with AI. It's like, oh, wait a minute, we didn't talk about that. Okay, we need to write this down. But I would say starting with an AI policy, at least a standard cybersecurity policy, and then growing from there is going to help you, depending on kind of what tools you use.
Yeah, and based on the needs of your business and your clients.
Yeah.
Right. So hopefully this has been a helpful way to frame getting started, validating what's working, what possibly isn't, what gaps you get to close. Again, I'll reiterate, #start small. Don't boil the ocean. That's just going to potentially lead to doing nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Celebrate the wins. If there's things that you heard in here that you're like, yeah, we've got it. And then some, like, it's important to acknowledge that because we're managing a lot of things and we know this environment is going to continue to change. So figuring out how often you need to revisit this, right? Quarterly, I recall Inette said at least, maybe half yearly, once a year, maybe quarterly, depending on what you're up to and where you are in the process. There's not one right way.
Yeah.
So we hope that you have figured out at least one actionable takeaway that you can put into practice within the next 30 days based on this conversation. And yeah, and thanks for your time. Again, we know that there's a lot going on, so we appreciate that you came to be in community with us to listen, learn, connect, and hopefully capture some nuggets. Any last words, Enette? No, she's like, I'm done. Thank you to New York, New Jersey Minority Supplier Development Council. We appreciate you. Shout out to Capital Region with Enette being on here. Wonderful collaboration. That's what this is all about. We get to support each other and collaborate to open up opportunity in the days and weeks ahead, and enjoy the upcoming holiday. Back over to you, Jackie.
Thank you, Shamus and Yannette. What a powerful webinar. I took notes because I'm in operations, so I have a list to attack for 2026. But thank you both. Exceptional webinar. I thank everyone for their time. A majority stuck in, so this I could tell this is needed. We might need to do a part 2. But again, thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. Y'all take care.
Bye-bye.